Welcome to the Code with Jason Meetup. Bonjour, namaste, buenos dias. just wanted to get everybody. Oh, maybe I should say guten tag for you, Anthony, even though you're an English speaker natively.
Yeah, that works though.
Yeah. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about ChatGPT. I'm going to demo something. I'm going to demo this thing that I created that lets you do, okay, I'll say it this way. You can have ChatGPT write tests for you, and then ChatGPT will also write the code to make the tests pass. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting. I did it on Thursday for the US version of the Code with Jason Meetup, and I think it went pretty well. I'm going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT in general before I dive into this, because I think some context is called for. When I first encountered ChatGPT, the first use case I imagined for it for programming was to write code. But then I quickly discovered that, well, first of all, a lot of the code ChatGPT will write is like, it doesn't really work. And second of all, when do you ever like just copy and paste a huge chunk of code from somewhere else into your code base? It's kind of a dangerous thing to do. It's kind of a not very smart thing to do, because you don't know what the code does. And you can use that chunk of code maybe, but like you're going to want to go through it very thoroughly and make sure you understand what it does. And not only understand what it does, but test it to make sure it does what you think it does. And that's true whether you're writing the code or you're getting it from somewhere else. And it doesn't matter if it's from AI or from another person. Again, you just wouldn't take a chunk of code from somewhere and put it in your app. That's just not smart. So you have to test it. You can test it manually, or you can write automated tests. But either way, you kind of have to go through line by line and test each individual line to be sure you're getting everything. And it's actually easier if you start from fresh and just take one line, test that. Once you feel confident that that does what you think it does, bring in the next line, test that, and repeat until you've brought over each line. That's actually a lot easier than taking the whole chunk of code and testing that as is, because it's just too hard to like imagine all the paths through that code when you're seeing it as one single chunk. So all that's to say, having ChatGPT write like entire programs for us, or entire functions or classes or whatever, I don't think that's a very good idea. It's not really a win productivity wise, I've found. So if we don't use it for that, what do we use it for? There's a lot of different things that we do as programmers. One is writing code, but we also write tests. We also do research. A lot of our work is just researching different tools and libraries and concepts and stuff like that. And that is one area where I've found ChatGPT to really shine. ChatGPT can basically write an ad hoc tutorial for you on any topic, and that saves tons of time. If I have to, for example, deploy an application using AWS and Kubernetes, and let's say I've never used either before and I know nothing about either of those things. In the dark days before ChatGPT, I would have to have done a bunch of research on AWS and done a bunch of research on Kubernetes. I know that I need some knowledge from some AWS related knowledge, some Kubernetes related knowledge. I don't know exactly what I need because I kind of don't know what I don't know. But I have to do all this research to find like the needle in the haystack until I say, aha, that's what I need. I'll take this from AWS, this from Kubernetes, combine these two things into a solution. But that's very wasteful, because I will have spent a lot of time studying and researching things that I never will end up using or needing to know. ChatGPT can help you skip all that stuff. You just say, ChatGPT, write me a custom tutorial for using AWS and Kubernetes that I can follow. And it just skips all that waste. Obviously, it's not guaranteed to be perfect. You might have to take a couple tries at it. ChatGPT might give you a solution that's not exactly what you want, but then you can try again. Most of the time, it's still a lot more efficient than doing all that research the old way. So that's a great use case for ChatGPT, is cutting down on research time. Another great use is debugging. I've found this really great technique where I say to ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to help me diagnose this bug. What I want you to do is I want you to ask me for files and information. You can ask me to perform tests, and I'll paste files to you, and I'll give you information. And you should keep doing this in a loop until we've found the diagnosis for the bug. And so ChatGPT at that point will say, okay, sounds good. First, give me the error message or a description of the bug, and I will. And it'll say, based on what you've told me, I want to see this certain file. And then I'll paste that in, and it says, okay, looks like this method is being called in this other class. Give me that file too. So I'll paste that in. And this progresses until the diagnosis has been made. And the great thing about that is the roles have been flipped. Instead of me now being the one who has to do all the thinking, I'm making ChatGPT do all the thinking, and all I have to do is provide information. And that's great because my goal as a programmer is to minimize the amount of brain power that I expend. Brain power is I think it's kind of our productivity bottleneck is our brain power. It's not our time, it's our brain power. I run out of brain power. I personally, at least, run out of brain power way before I run out of time in a day. So I want to conserve that brain power. So if I can make ChatGPT do all that thinking instead of me to diagnose this bug, then that's great. I call that kind of stuff intellectual ditch digging. It's not really high value stuff. It just depletes my mental energy. So if I can delegate that intellectual ditch digging, that's a win. Okay, so I said ChatGPT isn't good for writing application code, but I do think it can, at least in theory, be good for writing test code. And it might not be obvious what the difference is because they're both code. But the difference is with test code is a specification, whereas application code meets a specification. Application code needs to be tested. That's why you can't just drop in a chunk and assume it all works. But test code itself doesn't need to be tested. The idea just doesn't apply. And so you can specify some test cases, and ChatGPT can kind of fill in the boilerplate. You know, in a test file, the important thing you want to see is what the test cases are. And the rest of it's kind of just noise. When I look at a test file, I would prefer to only see what the test cases are, the meaning of the tests. All that other boilerplate and noise and stuff like that, that's not really that significant. And so I neither want to be distracted by that when I'm reading a test, nor do I want to take the mental brain power to write all that stuff when I'm writing a test. So if ChatGPT can do that stuff for me, then that's a win too. And the other way ChatGPT can, again, at least in theory, help with that is ChatGPT can help me conceive of test cases. I don't know. And the reason I say theoretically is because in my experience so far, ChatGPT isn't a huge help with this, not necessarily because of any weakness ChatGPT has, but just because somebody has to be in the driver's seat deciding what's wanted. And ChatGPT can't tell me what I want. It has to be the other direction where I tell the machine what I want. The machine can't tell me what I want because that's just nonsensical. Anyway, having said all that, I want to demo this tool for you, but I'm going to pause before I show that. Any questions or comments or anything from anybody? Okay, I will share my screen and I'll show you this tool. Okay. So what this is I wrote a command line Ruby program that interfaces with ChatGPT. It's kind of to compensate the fact that I don't have a way yet for ChatGPT to just consume my code base and write files to my file system and stuff like that. So that's the purpose that this program I wrote serves. I'm going to have ChatGPT write a program with me in a test-driven development style. So I have this prompt that I'm going to paste in. You guys will see what the prompt is. I'm not going to go over all of this, but here's the idea. I'm telling ChatGPT, hey, we're going to do some TDD together. These are the instructions for how we're going to do things. And here's how the workflow is going to go. I'm going to give ChatGPT a requirement, and then ChatGPT is going to write some test code based on my requirement. I'm going to copy that test code into my program. My program will automatically run the test. And then I'm going to tell ChatGPT what the error message was from that test. And then ChatGPT is going to write just enough code to make that error message go away. Okay, so I gave these instructions to ChatGPT. It says, understood. It seems we're about to embark on a new project using test-driven development. Your instructions are clear and I'm ready to assist you. Now, could you please provide an overall description of the software you'd like to build? After that, let's start with the first requirement. Okay, so I have a pre-written description of what I'd like to build. So I'm going to copy and paste that in and I'll briefly describe it. Okay, I want to build a command line program that takes some text, and then that's so funny. Last Thursday, I mispronounced the same word that takes some text and then prints a numbered list with counts of the words that appear in the text. The list should be ordered by number of occurrences and then alphabetical. For example, if the text is early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, then the output should be as follows. So as you can see, because early appears twice and so does to, those come first in the list. And early and to are ordered alphabetical with respect to each other. And then since everything else only appears once, that's in a separate alphabetical list. Okay, so here's the test code it gave us. Expect word, okay. Okay, yeah, and I kind of skipped over this. The first requirement is that when I provide some text, the program just prints out the same text. All right, so that test looks maybe okay. Let's start my program, paste it in. Okay, I pasted in the test code. My program ran that test code automatically. Cannot load such file word counter. So that's happening on this line here where it says require word counter. And that error message is correct. There's no file called word counter. We haven't created it yet. So I'm not going to think. I'm just going to copy this failure message and paste it to ChatGPT. Okay, so now we're going to create this file. But I think ChatGPT did a little too much. This wasn't the bare minimum to make that failure message go away. It wrote extra code. So I don't like that. It also made this print method. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's too much. I never cease to be tickled by these kind of things. I apologize for the oversight. Okay, yeah, here's the minimal change to make the error go away. This is how I would do it. Okay, and now it still says cannot load such file word counter. I'm not even going to think about why that might be the case. I'm just going to copy paste. Because again, I know what's going on. It's like it put it in the wrong place or something like that. But I want to delegate all the intellectual ditch digging to ChatGPT. Okay, so I guess that required needs to be different. Okay, now we're getting a different failure message. So I will paste that to ChatGPT. Okay. And it's doing a better job now. It's only giving this method, which is just barely enough to make the error message go away. So it learned from its mistake. I'm happy about that. Okay, and I'm going to continue to just paste the error message without even thinking about why it might be. By the way, GPT-4 is usually not this fast. It's a lot faster today than normal, so that's nice. Okay, and that made that failure go away. Now we get a new failure. Okay. Let's see what we get now. Now the test passes. Okay, it said please provide the output, so I guess I will. I'm curious what it's going to say to me. Okay, that's what I expected. It said, let's proceed to the next requirement. What would you like the program to do next? I'm going to say when the text is something like apple, apple, banana. No. Well, yeah. Apple, apple, banana. It should show that the count for apple is 2 and the count for banana is 1. No, I'm going to be a little more specific. It should print a numbered list showing that. There we go. See what kind of test it writes for us for this. Okay, so it keeps the original test. That's good. Okay, let's see what happens when we give it this. Undefined method count words. Okay, I'll give it that. And I want to comment that what we're going to end up with at the end of this is a program that I didn't write. ChatGPT will have written the entire thing, but significantly, it's going to have 100% test coverage. So meaning it can be maintained by a human, because no matter how good AI gets and no matter how capable it's going to be of writing code for us, it still needs to be understandable by humans, because it can't be the case that you work somewhere and all the code is it was written by AI. There's no tests. It's hard to understand. So imagine that. Imagine even if the code is understandable, the entire code base was written by AI with no tests, you can't touch anything, because if you modify some code, you might introduce a regression. In fact, it's inevitable that at some point you're going to introduce a regression. So if AI can write the code and test to cover the code too, that gives humans the ability to maintain the system. Okay, so now we're getting this other error message, failure message, I should say. I like that. They said, let's write the simplest version of count words that makes the test pass. It's like, yeah, if we hard code the output, that'll make it pass. Okay.
Went to the same university as I did.
Ha! Yeah, and I actually don't have a problem at all with what it did, because that's going to prompt me to write another test that forces that method to be real. The counter to that argument, or wait, the counter to that argument is that third-party dependencies are opaque. The developer doesn't peer into the code to vouch it. What do you mean by that, Pascal?
You were saying that nobody takes code, and you know, you're gonna have to maintain it for a long time. The counter to that is that we do that all the time, and you know, we require a gem, but we kind of trust that the community has you know, looked into the code, maintains it. So there's a bit of that precedent that we do take code that we don't vouch for into our application.
That is true.
So I get the subtleties. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is that, you know, there's this threshold of where to draw the line of this is the code that I maintain, and this is the code where I don't need to maintain.
Yeah.
And there might be an edge like that gets drawn with code that is, you know, ChatGPT created, you know. There might be a way to make it pass a trust level where you don't need to, like, but you can sandbox it into place and say, well, you know, there's it's not 100% trustworthy, but it passes the bar because we got this, and then I don't need to worry about it so much. There might be something like that that draws out.
Well, I think the key is ownership and responsibility. Who owns it and who's responsible for it? Because we do use other people's code in the form of libraries, but the ownership and responsibility certainly lies with the party who maintains that, and not us. I'm not sure how much that speaks to your point, but I think that's to be considered.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So it says this test has passed as expected. Next requirement. Okay, so let's do something that forces count words to be real. What about this? What about the case where there's banana, banana, apple? It should show banana first because there's two instances, two occurrences, and then apple next. I'm just going to say this much. Let's do a test case for banana, banana, apple, and let's see if it's smart enough to infer the rest. I suspect it will be. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to copy that. And naturally it fails because that method body is hard coded. Okay, that's kind of a lot of code that it wrote at once. And I don't understand everything that's there. But let's give it a go. Okay. Evidently it works. Okay, so it's asking for the next requirement, but I don't like this code. And so now I'm going to do something different. Here's where the human part comes in. Actually, okay, so I think I'm going to modify this code, but before, I'm going to give ChatGPT a fair chance. I'm going to ask it to do for me what I'm about to do myself. I suspect ChatGPT is going to fail at this, but let's see. Okay, I think count words is too big and too hard to understand. And you refactor it into a number of smaller methods and or classes to make it easier for a human to understand. Okay, so something that I don't like about this is it's writing the code in an imperative style. I personally prefer declarative. And that's interesting because that's a subjective opinion on my part. So that's where it's like, that's where the art comes in. You know, there's engineering and there's art in programming. And this is part of the art part where you kind of can't delegate that to a machine. This is my personal view. And so it's like, I can't abdicate my responsibility to have an opinion and just defer to the machine in all cases. So this is actually not too bad, but I'm gonna tell it this. From now on, write everything in a declarative style to the extent possible. Try that last one again. No. So the words method is more declarative, but format word counts, count word occurrences, those are still imperative. Sorted word counts is more declarative. All right, ChatGPT, you fail. I'm going to take the reins now. So the good thing is we have really thorough test coverage here. So I feel safe in refactoring this. So I'm going to run all my tests. Okay, they all pass. So instead of having a temp var for word counts, I'm going to have a method called word counts. Whoops. I switched to Dvorak and I'm still not good at typing in Dvorak. Okay, so I'll see how that goes. I messed it up. Words is undefined. Okay. It's only used in one place. All right, I'll say, oh, I can do this. At least I think I can do that. Okay, that works. I'm actually going to define another method called words. See if that works. Yeah. Okay. And here, I'm going to do this. I don't fully understand this yet, but I'm going to do this. See if that works. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I understand this now. Sorted words that sort by word count. I don't exactly understand it, but I'm not going to try super hard just yet. I'm more interested in this right now. Okay. Index. Oh, okay. Yep. Word. Okay. Okay. I'm happy enough with this for now. And let's compare. You know, this is a display related concern. I'm maybe getting too deep into the refactoring exercise. I think this could be made even easier to understand. So could this probably, because I don't understand this at a glance. Negative count, I don't understand what that means. This hash business, I don't really understand that. This is easier to understand. And maybe this is fine. Sorry, was somebody going to say something? Okay, so that's as far as I'm going to take the refactoring. But I think that's good enough to illustrate the point that if we let ChatGPT write code in a TDD manner, that allows humans to work with ChatGPT, which is always going to need to be the case. There's never going to be a case where we just hand over the reins to AI completely and say, hey, you just like take ownership of this code base now, or you take ownership of this business, because that just doesn't make sense. Businesses exist for humans, and humans are always going to want to be calling the shots. Because somebody needs to decide what to do. And the machine's not going to decide. Again, it's the reason for this is because humans are the ones with wants. Machines don't have wants. And because we have wants, we need to decide what we want to do. And that's the reason why humans are always going to need to be involved with the code base. So again, doing it this way gives us a result that humans can work cooperatively with ChatGPT rather than having ChatGPT. ChatGPT could have just written this in one go if we asked it to, but then we couldn't refactor it. We couldn't add our own stuff to it. Humans couldn't work with it. So that's what I like about this. Having said that, would I actually write a production application in this manner? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. But I think it's pretty neat, and I'm going to continue to work on this and see how far I can get. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We got a few minutes. I usually keep these to about an hour. We got 20 minutes left in the hour. Anything anybody wants to talk about or anything anybody wants to ask?
This looks awesome, but what scares me is the next generation of juniors trying to use that and us having to review that code. Have you seen that? And it's like one of your juniors trying to use ChatGPT and not really understanding their code and, oh, review this for me.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a legitimate concern. With this exercise I went through just now, I knew how to wield ChatGPT effectively so that it would write tests in the way that I wanted. But I was only able to do that because I already know how to write tests. For somebody who's less familiar, even with these exact same instructions, like last Thursday when I did this other demo, ChatGPT wrote a test that I thought was really poor, but somebody who's less experienced might not recognize that, and they just keep going with it and they create a mess for themselves. So I think ChatGPT can be used two different ways. One is if there are things you don't know or skills you don't have, ChatGPT can bridge the gap and it can lower the bar. But then for other use cases, ChatGPT can give you leverage, but it can't be a replacement for skill, and you need to have the skill. And I think this TDD with ChatGPT workflow, it still requires me to have skill. And so I wouldn't just hand this over to a junior developer and say, hey, code like this, because they might shoot themselves in the foot. Having said that, they could shoot themselves in the foot just doing everything manually still. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is worse, but it's not, it doesn't fix it. It doesn't substitute the skill. And I do think that we'll probably see a lot of developers on the lower end of the skill level and who don't understand the things we talked about today regarding you can't just have ChatGPT write a bunch of code for you. I think we will see developers using ChatGPT to write entire programs for them, to write production code for them, and they're going to create a really big mess really fast. And then we're obviously going to see really experienced developers using ChatGPT in much smarter ways, and they're going to become so much more valuable.
Well, I like the way, like Pascal, what we're talking about, making a container where, oh, this is tagged as this was created by ChatGPT. We have it, don't quite trust it, but it's there. I kind of like that idea where it's somewhere else in the code. Like this section of the code is all ChatGPT or tagged with ChatGPT. So the next person who has to deal with it, okay, that's what's created by a machine. So we can trust it, but not really. I like that idea.
I do have a hard time imagining a scenario where I would use code that I don't completely trust. And trust, I even am not quite comfortable with that word because I don't trust code. I just verify it. And I don't have trust in it. I have a degree of confidence in it. Like I would express it in that I have like, because I would be really hesitant to say that I have like 100% confidence in any piece of code unless it's very trivial. So I would only say like I have a high degree of confidence that this code works, that sort of thing. And it seems like I have a hard time imagining a scenario where I would hold any code to a lower standard than normal just because it came from a machine. Yeah.
Until stakeholders forces us to use it. Maybe that's the only way. With tagging it, then this code was created by a machine. You know it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. I don't see myself complying with that kind of desire.
Yeah, I agree. One other thing, when you were doing your test cases, one thing that is hard for some of us, well, especially me, is when you write test cases, the happy path is easy to write. But have you tried ChatGPT to create the negative test cases?
Maybe let's try it. Can you think of an example for this one?
Actually, just asking ChatGPT, could you think about negative test cases from what the test cases that I wrote?
Get down. No, get into bed. In bed.
Oh, I'm not sharing my screen, am I?
No.
Thank you, mate.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Is it going to give me the actual code? If you want, I can generate the corresponding test cases for these negative scenarios. Yes, but one at a time. Whoa. I see what happened. It put a pound sign before that because it's a comment, but it interpreted it as markdown, so it appeared as a heading. Maybe it'll turn into a code block when it's finished.
Yeah, this one is good about the empty input.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's doing that. Let's look at its other scenarios here. So the empty input, that's good. Input with only white space characters. Mm-hmm. Input with special characters. I don't know if I use the word special characters, but the idea seems good. I would maybe say like punctuation or something like that. Case, yeah, these are all good. I'm actually pretty impressed. It'll be nice when GPT-4 is as fast as 3.5. Okay. So let me get out of this. Fire up GPT-TDD again. Oh, it put in the fences also? That might be a problem. Yeah. I don't understand what happened actually. I'm gonna try this. Whoa. That I don't understand why the fences came through. I'm gonna try that again. No fences this time. Okay. Cannot load such file word counter. So it seems as though ChatGPT forgot what it was doing. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So even though it's really smart, it's obviously not always perfect. It seems to have forgotten what it's doing. Maybe not. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to try to set it straight. You seem to have forgotten the instructions. Below are the instructions again. After you read the instructions, give me the corrected test file. And soon I think we're going to bump up against the 25 prompt limit, but we'll go as long as we can. Now the test is looking a bit different. And this is like worse. Let's look at the other test. Okay. Yeah, with this test, each test case was like self-contained. And now for some reason it decided to put this outside all the test cases. So now it's hard to understand what this is supposed to belong to. So I don't like that.
You could try to tell it to wrap the first two into a context also.
Well, I'm just going to tell it this. I'm going to say like, just add this test case, but don't modify anything else. I want you to leave the test file as it was before, but only add the new test case for empty input. Here's the original test file as a reminder. So as you can tell, this workflow is still deeply imperfect. Like with all of this like babysitting that we have to do with ChatGPT because it apparently is forgetting things, is this really a productivity win over just doing all this work ourselves? It's very questionable. But you can see through this kind of proof of concept, you can imagine how things could eventually get there. This is looking more promising so far. Okay. Ha! It seems to have made that same mistake. Yeah, that's funny. Although at this point, just kind of annoying. Let's see if it handles this part better this time, though. Or you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I wanted to ask if you've tried Copilot, which I think makes this kind of workflow of using AI to write code a lot neater. I've been using it myself, and I find that I can write the names of the tests, and it will fill in the rest of the code for me. And it doesn't have this issue with forgetting the previous tests. So have you tried Copilot?
I did very briefly, and then I decided that Copilot was like solving a problem that I didn't have, because for me, like writing the application code was not nearly my bottleneck. But that was before it occurred to me to try this thing where I have AI write the test code for me. So that might be worth trying. Oh, that passes now. Interesting. No code changes were needed to make that pass. Anyway, that might be worth trying. The one thing that I can't imagine how Copilot could do it for me is the part where I run the test and then feed in the failure message and have the AI write the code to make it pass. If Copilot can do that, I can't imagine how. But it sounds like maybe Copilot would be better at writing the test itself, or maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. But that's an interesting idea. I haven't tried it for that purpose. Okay,
So I'll
anyway.
give it a go. So I find that I can copy the error message into a comment in the code, and then it uses that somehow to write the application code too.
Oh, I
I
see.
think this workflow is a bit more productive, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what I'm wanting to do eventually is to incorporate ChatGPT into my to integrate it with Vim and Tmux, so I never have to leave the editor environment and I can still follow the same workflow. So I have access to the Open API, and I might try that at some point, but right now it's in this just really rudimentary state. Okay, any more questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining me again today. And hopefully that was inspiring. If you guys are using ChatGPT and if you come up with any ideas or projects or anything like that, please tell me about them. I'd love to hear about them. And in any case, I will see you all next time.
Cheers.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.